Welcome to In the Living Room, where everyday stories reveal extraordinary faith. I am your host, Stephanie Lopez, and in today's episode, we are exploring historical and spiritual journeys of Jamaican women who migrated to England between the period of the 60s to the 80s. You will find that many of this will relate to you wherever in the world you might be. My guest today is Catherine Grant. She is a PhD student at the University of Toronto. And I'm going to pass this over to her, let her introduce herself, tell you a little bit of what she's doing, and then she'll follow that with a brief prayer. Thank you, Catherine, for joining me. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Catherine Grant-Wata. I am a PhD candidate at University of Toronto in the Department of History. The project that I'm working on is an oral history project interviewing 15 Jamaican-born women in Birmingham, England, and in Toronto, Canada, to find out more about what their experiences were like moving here, how they were able to build community and institutions. I'm definitely writing a chapter about faith because it's such an important part about Jamaicans women's lives, and I look forward to exploring these ideas with you, Miss Lopez. Thank you.
You're welcome. Can you say a brief prayer to introduce the show?
I would. I will. Thank you. Dear Lord, please guide our conversation. Let us glorify your name. We pray for our family overseas. We pray for those that are less fortunate. We thank you for this opportunity to converse and be in fellowship together. Amen.
Amen. I want to ask you a quick question first. As you were talking, it just came to my mind. What motivated you to do this study?
Um, I think growing up here,
Mhm.
the history books that I read did not include Jamaican women, Black people, and
Mhm.
I think that I really wanted to work on a project that reflected the lives of people and women that I respect so much and that I
Mhm.
know have made important contributions to this society and in the UK where I was born.
Mhm.
Jamaican women are formidable women, are community builders, do so much for everything from building the church to serving the community. And oftentimes, this is a chapter in history that is unknown or not widely discussed.
Mhm. It's very interesting. Yeah,
Thank
very
you.
interesting. My first question would be, what do you think inspired Jamaican women to leave their homeland? What was it?
Oftentimes, what I'm getting from being in conversation with my elders is that they left to seek greener pastures,
Mhm.
sometimes to reunite with family members and to pursue their dreams.
Yes. I know that in the 50s, I know, for example, in my case, my mother, I didn't even know my mother until when I was in high school. She was one of those who migrated. What did they call them again?
Uh, in Toronto and in Canada, there was the West Indian domestic scheme. So
Okay.
you could come here to work as a nanny or domestic in, often a well-to-do household. And a lot of Jamaican women use that opportunity as a stepping stone. So went back to school or went into other career choices, but
Mhm.
worked in that program to pursue better opportunities.
Yes. Um, is there a story or a personal family story, some kind of story, family or otherwise, of a Jamaican woman who you can share and a situation that you know of or you have heard of?
Yeah, I really feel like I'm going to dedicate my research project to my grandmother.
Mhm.
A mother of seven, a strong, a little bit tallow woman, working and taking care of the family. She worked so many jobs. She made sacrifices so that her children and her grandchildren and her great grandchildren could have better lives. I really recognize that and know that so much. And even thinking about my great aunts who moved to Toronto or moved to New York or other metropolitan cities, they did the same.
Mhm.
And always thinking about family back home, sending money back home to try to take care of family that didn't migrate as well. Just the such family oriented people, women of faith, women that were always thinking about how they could better their lives and others.
Yes. I can also, I can, as you speak, I know it's going to be relating to me. And I'm not one of those that, well, maybe somehow, because we all have migrated, many of us. I was one of those who came to Canada in the 80s. But let's look at it. As I said before, my mother left Jamaica when I was a little kid in the 60s. I really didn't even know her. And went to England. And I'm sure, as you said, the only job that they had at the time was domestic, anything menial, Um, and as you speak about it, I look at Black women worldwide. This is what we were all literally all given to do. Couldn't be nurses or any of that. We're really strong. We are really strong women. Oh boy. What do you think were their early impressions of life in England? What or
Um,
you know,
no, no, sir, go ahead.
yes, in
Yeah, yeah.
England, Canada.
Um, yeah, yeah. Based on conversations that I've had,
Mhm,
I would say that um, they noticed that it was a very different place than Jamaica in the sense that they had to make more of an effort to make community because family members or neighbors that you grew up with weren't living in the same neighborhood or next door, and make they had to make community and find friends and connect with family. It took more of an effort to do that.
yeah.
um, I'd also say that some women discovered that they were moving into a hostile environment that you know white British or Canadians had stereotypes or negative assumptions about Black Jamaicans moving into their neighborhoods or what they viewed as their country. And this wasn't always often the case, but in England particularly, there was some signs in public businesses that would read, no blacks, no Irish, and no dogs. And
Mhm,
looking at different sociological studies, you could see that there were Black people here in Canada that experienced housing discrimination, or their children were streamlined and not given fair educational opportunities because they were assumed to be intellectually inferior. Or we can think of instances as well of, um, a lack of access to better opportunities and a quality of life just um, because of being Black and being Jamaican. We can look at statistics at the time where there's people who are, you know, um, have less education than a Jamaican cohort that migrated to Toronto or to Ontario in
mhm,
the 50s and 60s
mhm,
and did not speak English, but because they were white, we can see that the statistics about average household income, they fared better and had better household incomes, and the only differential factor or isolating factor would be race.
yeah,
So that would speak to sometimes I would say stunted economic opportunities or barriers due to race. And this is not always the case, but statistics do speak to that. Some of the difficulties that we encountered moving into these new cities and host countries.
wow. That's a challenge. Do you have any form of? I know you're doing this as a study. When as you speak, are there any specific statistics or anything that really impacted you as you go through this study?
Well, I think that something that came to mind is a lot of Jamaican households being women headed, and um, a lot of us not having retirement savings or having to work at a later age because of the lack of savings and generational wealth.
Mhm,
So that's something that struck me. And I also can relate this to my own family history
mhm,
of, working so hard and not taking care of one's health. And then later in life, having chronic illnesses. That's something also that has came up in my research.
Wow. That is so so sad. But even today though, I think to even in this time and now in the 2000s, I think a lot of Black people are still facing that sort of discrimination. Do you agree?
I do think that there is progress, but I do also think that there are patterns and continuities. You
Mhm,
know, the history informs present conditions. So if we were discriminated against in the past, many people can't say legally, can't say out loud their attitudes or discriminate in a blatant way.
mhm.
But behind closed doors or covertly, they will continue to practice, racism, and it does affect us. Because statistically speaking, we can look at indicators of quality of life,
Mhm.
employment discrimination cases, and we can see that uh, if we look at even average household income, not a lot has changed.
I wonder what we can do to change that. Laws, you think?
Yeah, I think laws is one part, and I think coming together as a community and sharing opportunities and uplifting one another is another way of, combating those isms and, covert racism, particularly.
Mhm. Wow. So those were some of the challenges, race being a factor, and is still so much a factor today. Um, it is not. I don't think education has much to do with that. It's just the color of a man's skin, just the color of a man's skin. Um, so race. So they were racially discriminated against. And what about cultural differences?
So, in reports that I read on housing discrimination,
Yeah.
there'd be comments like, "Oh, I don't want to rent to people from Jamaica because they play loud music,
Mm,
or they have, visitors coming in and out of the house, or cultural foods, you know, I think that that is also an element." I do want to speak to the experiences of Jamaican women, particularly. You mentioned earlier about Jamaican women working in service and menial roles. And there's another side of the coin. Jamaican women did move to Canada and to the UK to pursue professional careers and to go to school as well. But oftentimes in these service positions, they experienced, an intersection of what I would call gender discrimination and racism. I can speak to my mother's experience of being a personal support worker
mm,
and calling to tell someone that she was going to show up. They assumed her to be a white person because of her British accent, and when they saw that she was black on arrival, said, "I don't want a black woman, take doing my personal care, et cetera, et cetera." Or she said that she often would find that she would have to do heavier lifting or work than her white counterparts.
wow. I've heard about those stories too,
Yeah.
I've heard that I've heard the same story, the voice, and when they see them and it still is happening in some places today.
Yeah,
It
for
still is.
sure.
It still is happening. What did they say were their coping methods? That
Um, coping methods, yeah. I would say across the board, Jamaican women have told me that their faith has got them through difficult times. They realized that there was a purpose for this, struggle, or as Jamaicans say, sufferation, that
Mhm,
it was to help, better their families and to save for a goal. Within one generation, many of these women had, their children and go to pursue college or university educations, save
mhm,
for a house and become homeowners, even have retirement homes in Jamaica,
mhm.
So there was um, you know,
Efforts
there was strife and there was struggle, but it was for, a reason.
for the better. And that is true. We go through it. We know it's not going to be forever. We do that because we're not, maybe a lot of people say, I'm not planning to live in this country forever. So, I just come to work. As long as you pay me, it's okay. And then I'll take my money, do what I want so I can retire nice, sensibly, and well off in Jamaica. Now,
And you know that the church has always been a cornerstone of our
the
community.
cornerstone of Jamaicans,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
There's more churches in Jamaica per capita than anywhere in the world. So wherever we migrate, that faith goes where we go.
that's so important. That is so true. So, did they have did they talk about the climate?
Oh, all the time I would get when one of the funniest things that I would hear is um, Jamaicans that moved to Toronto talking about, especially when they came in winter, they were not ready. The cold licked them bad. They weren't ready for it. And even in the UK, that it was cold in their bones, that it was gray, that it was always raining. And where is the sun? The distance from the sun is a common theme in both places.
I'm going to ask you this anyways. I've heard that it is said that the English people, the ones who migrate to England, they after a while, I guess it's because they are missing home so much and they're absent from home, or whether it's a climate or what it is, that they go a little bit cocoa. Is there any fact to that? Is that any have you is there any study that proves any of that might cause mental or emotional stress on them?
Well, I know for sure that there is seasonal,
Mhm.
depression disorders.
Oh, it's
Like
seasonal.
it does affect people. A lack of sun and vitamin D, and I know that for people of color and melanated folks, doctors do recommend if you have a long winter season to take that vitamin D because it does affect your mood.
Oh, so that is what it is.
Yeah, yeah,
So they saying people going cocoa in England is there is just that.
yeah.
Not
Just the lack of sun and
yeah,
vitamin D, and if you're able to, try and break up the winter. If you're living here or there, go back and get some sunshine.
get
It will do
some
wonders
sunshine. I can imagine too that the fact that they are living different lives
for
because
sure.
back home, back in Jamaica, we go out. So there's this cultural shock too, right? We are accustomed, we go to our neighbors, we talk to our neighbors, and we mix that way. And then, as you said earlier, friends are not there. So all of this, you can't walk on the street. We have a custom in Jamaica, and I think it might be a lot of Black people, maybe because have been outside so much, we have to meet and talk to people. So we say, "Hi, Miss Matty. Hi, Miss Jane. How are you?" And we stop and talk. But here, with the limited, I'm just with the limited. Tell me if what I'm saying is any make any sense. With the limited sunshine and the limited time that people have to do things, you might find that you're not making friends as easily and quickly as you would in those countries. Is there a fact to that, or is that me just talking?
No, definitely loneliness is a theme that was brought up in
Mhm.
Jamaica. You'll stop at the corner
Yes,
and make sure that you don't pass anyone without saying hello.
it's true.
People sit on their veranda, sip a lemonade, and chat politics.
Mhm.
I think here, even you think about the way that houses are built, that people will live in a neighborhood and not know their neighbors for
It's true.
years.
It's
That would not happen in Jamaica.
It would never happen. We talk and we meet and, we go about our business knowing each other, knowing when everybody is sick. You can have people even being sick here and dying and you don't even know until the summer,
For
until it,
sure.
you know?
Yeah.
So again, how important was faith and church? Did they form churches? What did they do?
Um, so going back to the conversations I had with, my elders in
Mhm,
Birmingham and Toronto, there was a few things that I thought were interesting. So
mhm,
oftentimes there would be sister churches where when someone would migrate from Jamaica, they would already have a church ready to go to when they moved to Birmingham or Toronto.
mhm.
Or what I found out, what in my discussion with my elders in Birmingham, England, more
Mhm.
that they would go to, let's say, an Anglican or a Catholic or a Presbyterian church that
Yeah,
was, a mixed church, but they wouldn't feel welcomed, or they felt that all of the Black people were grouped together and were sitting on a bench. So because they didn't feel welcome and they felt that it was a hostile environment and
mhm,
it did not, speak to ideas of Christian brotherhood and sisterhood.
mhm.
They created their own churches.
Yeah,
First, sometimes these were, meeting in a school hall or a storefront, and when they were able to save up as a congregation, then they found land and built churches. And some of these historical churches, like Cannon Street Baptist in Birmingham or George Street Baptist, have been there since the 60s and 70s, and where people came together and pooled their monies um, to have a church and to have a community center and a place
Mhm.
where Jamaican folk and Caribbean folk that were moving would have a church to go to. And the
Yes,
same thing I could say happened in Toronto as well. There'll be sister churches, or people would found and create their own congregations.
it's so true. It's true. I can think about even now too, many of the churches that we go to, you'll still see that they're either primarily black or, a few, if you find a mixed church, there's only a few of us because they culturally different. The way they practice their religion, the way we worship is quite different. Agree?
I agree. From hymns to worship service
Hmm.
to the community, and
It's community.
yeah,
It's
that's what it's
community.
about for sure.
Yes. So, scripture and daily lives. Do you think that was brought over into their lives? Do you
Uh,
think
oh,
that?
for Oh, for sure, for sure.
Mhm,
Even I can, from the interviews that I've had, and my own family members always, say a prayer, chant a psalm, go to Proverbs and look for wisdom. I have one auntie that I can think about who wakes up at 5 a.m. every morning to do her devotions, looks up at the mountains and prays for all of the family members from, the UK to Canada to across the United States.
mhm.
And, these are women of faith that carried their faith to the places that they moved to, and passed it on as well to their children and to their descendants.
Yes, and I'm sure our faith builds us, make us stronger, make us a little bit more resilient.
Yeah, 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 because you feel like that, God is in control, and you can pray your way out of any situation.
Mhm.
Prayer for covering, prayer for, wisdom, pray for guidance in difficult situations.
Yes.
And you can give your troubles to God. And I think that is something that's been passed down to me as well. My grandaunts, my mom, my grandma, all of these women are praying women. And when you feel stressed or you feel worried about something, you know that you can tell them and they're going to pray for you as well.
Yes, it's so important. So faith plays a great role in their resilience.
For sure.
For sure, it's important, and it still is, even in my life. I am one of those people who, because of my faith, I'm not easily broken. It's so important. Is there any kind of specific kind of denominations now you find that they form? Because for most of us, because of the way we do things in Jamaica, we're more Pentecostals. Is that a fact?
So something that I found was really interesting, and
Mhm,
my uncle, who is a reverend in Derby in the UK, Reverend Paul Gordon, talked about this, that a lot of Jamaicans, when they initially migrated to the UK
mhm.
and to Canada, were either Methodist, Baptist, Anglican, or Catholic.
Yeah.
But because of the way we form church community, a lot of Jamaicans now became Pentecostal, or associated with the Church of God, and or sometimes stay Baptist or Methodist, but formed their own church communities.
Mhm.
But in Jamaica as well, there is this intersection of, I would say, colorism and class, where
Yes,
people of a certain background were more likely to be Catholic or
yes,
Anglican, and
that's
other people were more likely to be Pentecostal. But that when moving to different countries and communities, a lot of people found more, I think, in common with a Pentecostal style of worship than, quote unquote, going to a Canadian or a British Anglican or Catholic church. It was very different from the churches of the same denomination back in Jamaica.
I tell you that when you go to church and you can make a noise and clap and dance and relieve those stress, that's what the Pentecostal church is. We are in a different environment, and that different environment causes us to do things differently. You
For
know,
sure.
you're stressed, and so you have to find a way to relieve those stress. And I think that's why we go to, many of us find ourselves in the Pentecostal.
Yeah, yeah. I can't remember the statistic, but it's really interesting. I know specifically in England, and I'm sure
Yeah.
that it's similar here, but like a lot of Jamaicans were of different denominations, but then coming to the UK or Canada and looking for church community, they became Pentecostal because that's where they met other Jamaicans and
Ah,
people who worshipped in a different in the same way.
is a sense of community.
Yeah, yeah.
Community. You find more of your people together, and so you worship together. Because a lot of times I've always wondered. One of the things I always wonder is why are we not drawn to go to the other churches? You know,
Yeah, yeah.
many of us still are in, as you said, many of us are, many people are Catholics. You'll find that those who are Catholics are in a maybe a higher hierarchy. So we form community or we form churches based on what you say again, the standard of living, or what is it again? Which is word.
Um, I'm not sure what phrase I just used, and I'm gonna blame that on baby brain. But I will say that um, we came to these locales with different denominations and seeking community and worship that was similar to back home. A lot of Jamaicans who were Anglican or Catholic or other denominations became Pentecostal because they were able to worship in a similar way and find fellow Jamaicans in the Pentecostal church. There's a statistic actually that I remember reading about um, how largely a lot of Jamaicans became Pentecostal, moving when they migrated.
Yes, yes. So faith influence. What about them as wives and mothers and workers and faith? How does that?
Yeah, I really want to speak to Jamaican women and women in the church in general, um, being called to serve, doing everything from teaching Sunday school to going into the church early to clean
Yeah.
to cooking for bake sales or to raise money for the church, even teaching, Black history during Black History Month or setting their own curriculums to make sure that their children do learn about Jamaican history and have a positive self image. There's so much important work that Jamaican women have done through
Yeah.
the church, and the church has always been that cornerstone for community service and community activism. And
Yeah.
I can speak a little bit more to that
Can
whenever.
you?
Yeah,
Can you
yeah, for sure.
say something more about that? What's happening with community activism and the church?
Um, it was so fulfilling for me
Mhm.
to learn more about this long tradition of Jamaican women doing service and doing community service through the church.
Mhm.
I can think of there's a wonderful woman, Cynthia Spence, that I got to sit down with from Birmingham, England,
Mhm.
and her church helped to establish a shelter for women
Yeah.
who were victims of domestic violence,
Mhm.
and this was fully funded by their church. There's also a phenomenal woman, Frederica Walters, from Pickering, who
Oh,
um, volunteers all
yeah.
the time at homeless shelters and has taken up mental health as a cause.
Mhm.
And um, this service and this connection to the community is something that Jamaican women have been doing. There's another woman who wanted to be unnamed, but she's from Toronto,
Mhm.
and she goes to Jamaica 3-4 times a year to
Mhm.
make sure that Jamaican schools in rural areas have um, pen, paper, pads, school supplies. She was telling me that in one area in St. Elizabeth, she went to a school where there was three teachers who were sharing one eraser for a chalkboard. So that's her cause that she has taken up to fill up barrels with school supplies and go to make sure that these schools have the supplies that they need and to encourage education because education is that ticket out of poverty. Education is upward mobility, and we also know the important link between young women becoming educated because they always will take care of their families and give back to their community. When you educate one woman, there's
Mhm.
so much
You
people who
educate the
benefit from
village.
that.
That's
A
what they say.
100%, a hundred
That's what they
percent.
say. But you know, even as you're speaking and your studies, particularly about English ladies and Canadian ladies, I think it can be related to people in anywhere in the world, anywhere where Jamaican people are, especially in the United States. Because I was online recently and I saw that there was this lady who was doing something like that. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of them do. They just as we're talking, and we're just. It doesn't matter where we are as Jamaicans. We make an impact. We make impact. We do things. I think similarly in our various communities.
For sure. To speak more to even the community service part,
Mhm.
there were Jamaican women in Birmingham and here that
Yeah.
organized prison ministry. So they were writing letters to inmates, to let them know that they're not alone. Because oftentimes when people do go to prison, they're abandoned by their family members or they're shunned by society. So they prayed for these inmates. They wrote letters, so they had connections to the outside world when they left prison and were being integrated back into society. They help them to find work. They help them to, socialize and find community in their churches.
Mhm.
I also can think about Jamaican women and churches helping to um, create education campaigns around anti-apartheid, in the 80s and 90s, and
Yes.
and bring attention to those causes where people were being discriminated against and treated as second-class citizens in their own country because of the color of their skin. A fun fact is Jamaicans can go to South Africa without a visa because Jamaica was one of the first countries that stood up against apartheid. And I feel that speaks again to that lickle but talawa attitude that we have, where we don't accept injustice, and if we see someone, being a bully, we will call it out, for lack of a better term. And I've also heard through different testimonies too, Jamaican women organizing in churches campaigns against police brutality, and profiling, and there's just so many aspects to their community service. And I learned so much in these conversations.
So true. I had there was a very active person in Toronto when I just came here in the 80s. His name was Dudley Laws. And Dudley Laws caused a whole lot of changes. A lot of them. There was a community of them who were really impacting the changes, were really there for changes in a community. I think anywhere in the world, I'm proud to be a Jamaican. I am so proud because we don't take foolishness for long, you know? And
I'm so proud of our heritage. And if you look at this history of community activism, labor activism, we don't take we will not take oppression. We stand up and we make our voices heard, and that's another theme that is reoccurring throughout my interviews as well.
yes, let's take a minute break and we'll be right back.
Hey there, do you like what you see? Then subscribe to CHRY TV and never miss an update. Like this broadcast and let us know what you think in the comments below. Share this broadcast with your friends and family and help us spread the word. Thanks for watching CHRY TV.
Welcome back, Catherine, to In the Living Room. Remember to please like, share, and support our channel on Facebook and YouTube and Roku, wherever we are. Thank you so much. I'm speaking to Catherine Grant. She's a PhD student at the University of Toronto, and her study is with regards to the effect of Jamaican women in the European and the Canadian society. In short, that's what it is. And the changes that we as women have caused to take place in the various societies that we live in. Thank you, Catherine, for being here again. And I would like to ask you to please like and subscribe and share, make your comment. And if you have, if you need to have Catherine speak on your show or on your program or on your event, will you be available, Catherine?
Oh, for sure. Doing the work of public history is my calling. And I want, my children, I want greater society to know the contributions that Jamaican women have made, where we come from, our foremothers, our elders. My life has been enriched by sitting down and speaking with my elders. I know that this is a history that not just Jamaican Canadians and Black people here should know, but larger society should. So if you would like to get in contact with me, please do reach out.
And I put her information at the end of it, or you can send it to me, and I'll definitely be sending it to her. We have to help each other in every way we can.
I appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Now, I have another question with regards to us women. Um, is there any? I think I've asked this: how women like us we impact our communities by creating shelters. We fight for women's rights. We look after the homeless. Can you add anything to that? Some of the things that we do in our various communities.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of um, women say that they give back to the communities in Jamaica that they're from. So
Mhm,
whether that's school supplies or everything for anything from bringing soccer jerseys back to the old high school that
mhm.
they're from. There's this notion of giving back that really stuck with me, and I think that it's important for us in the diaspora to do that.
Mhm. And not only in the diaspora to our native lands, but even here locally,
For sure,
where we live right now. And I'm sure all in England, Jamaica, wherever we are doing work in our community.
for
We're
sure.
raising funds, we're building, we're investing. We're powerful. Thank you, Lord, for letting me be a Jamaican.
No, I co-sign that. I
Yeah.
am I'm so proud of where I come from, my heritage. There's something in that soil. I always think about where my dad's side is from, Bensington, St. Anne's, and that red soil, and where I'm rooted and where I come from. And I'm blessed to be from that land, to spring from that soil.
Yes. And you know what? I'm just putting this in for all of you who are watching who are not Jamaicans. I know that some of you go around and tell people you're Jamaicans when you're not Jamaicans. We welcome you all.
It's all love.
It's all love. It's all love. We love you. um, now, um, the spiritual seeds that a woman plant in our generations, are we successful in doing that?
I think so because you teach a child to pray through hard times. From
Mhm,
their little nighttime bedtime routine. You
mhm,
you pray, and this is something that they will do all of their life. Through good times and through bad times.
mhm.
And I think faith through service is exemplary because people get to see you live out those gospel values.
Mhm.
Unfortunately, sometimes people see a side of the church that, is fear and judgment and
Mhm.
gossip and hypocrisy and not love. It's not rooted in love and it's not rooted in service. So I
Yeah,
think if others see that service and see that love, they will take up the faith themselves.
it's true, absolutely. And maybe some of the reasons why you talk about hypocrisy there, why even some of our young people are not so much involved is because the parents, they might view their parents as being hypocrites. They're not sticking to the faith that they're passing down to the children.
Yeah, the do what I say and not what I do
Not
part,
with yes.
or I think it's something that is a struggle when people move out of a community that is so faith oriented because we're living in largely secular societies. In Jamaica to this day, people still say prayers at schools and public schools, but
Definitely.
here that's not the case.
Mhm.
So I think oftentimes sometimes there's some of us that grow up in the church but only attend church now when there's a christening or a funeral or a special event and have lost that faith.
Mhm.
So that was something that also did come up in my interviews.
Yes.
my grandmother's talking about how she's upset that her grandchildren don't go to church regularly or attend
Mhm.
Sunday school, but that's not her decision to make.
Mhm. Yeah, that's so true. That's true. Is there anything you want to add to what we have said?
Um, I think leading by example. I think that for myself,
Mhm.
I got to grow up with a community that was rooted in love, and I want my children to experience that.
Mhm.
But I think that's something that was a really important reflection that came out one of these conversations is if less Jamaicans are attending church or putting faith at the center of their lives, who turns up in the diaspora is also going to be very different.
That's true. That's so true. So it doesn't matter. You carry your beliefs with you. A
For
lot of
sure.
instances. Yes. One last question I have. Um, what lessons can our modern women learn from this resilience and courage of our foreparents?
Um, I think what, modern women, young Jamaican,
Mhm.
Canadian women, Jamaicans in the diaspora can learn is the ability to just not take no for an answer, to always keep pushing, to always keep fighting, to not, resign yourself to being a victim. They always found a way, and um I just can think about everything from the partner to save for someone's school fees or to pay for a down payment on a house, or working one or two jobs for a time
Mhm.
to get where you want to be. Or lots of Jamaican women did this, worked during the day, took care of the kids, and went to night school so that they could better themselves. you know um Always just striving. And I think that mentality, if we take that up, you'd be so surprised how far we can continue to push and break down barriers.
It's so true. So never give up.
Never give up.
Never give up, and don't ever forget where you're coming from.
Yeah, yeah, the heritage that you come from. Think about Queen Nanny, think about Sam Sharp, thinking about just knowing that, there's so much that our ancestors overcame and that we are our ancestors' wildest dreams. There's, of course, things that we do have to overcome, but there's so much opportunity for us to pursue.
So great. Is there anything you want to summarize? Is there a final word you would like to have?
I would just like to thank you for this conversation, and
Yes.
just I appreciate so much where I'm coming from, our heritage, and just thinking about,
Yes.
thinking about our ancestors, the sacrifices that they made, that they did not have choices, and that we do, and we should take that up and remember that all the time.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Catherine, for joining me today in my living room. And
Thank you for the
I really
invitation.
appreciate having you. And as I may repeat that, please, if you need to have Catherine talking a lot more on this subject, please, you can contact me, or I'll put her information at the bottom of this video, and you can contact her there. Thanks again, Catherine. So today you heard some stories, a little bit of historical facts on Jamaican women and their resilience in England and Canada. And I want to include my American friends, my USA friends, and USA. Can't leave you out. Their conviction and their courage and their strength. So these Jamaican, the women we talk about, our ancestors, they left their islands, they left the island for better life. But they also carried with them deep faith and deep conviction. And they, in the process, endured severe hardship and barriers. They turned their faith into actions in building homes and churches and communities and generations. So for us, let us continue to honor them by living our best lives rooted in prayers, perseverance, and purpose. Thank you again for joining me, and may God bless you. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.